Okay.
All right, I think we're live right now. So welcome everybody. I'm just going to give this a moment for my page to load before we get started. There you go. Just put that there. Perfect. We're here. Welcome everyone to Love Talks. It's another wonderful Thursday on whatever day it is that you're watching this. But if you're coming to us live, thank you so much for being here. And I'm really, really excited. The energy has been really wonderful this week, actually. And I'd love to hear your experience of that and how you're going at the moment as well. But I have this incredible woman with me. I think she's really rather extraordinary. She's called Angelique Peigne. And she is in France, like myself, totally different corners of France, but down here in the south. And she's currently doing a tour of France. And this lady has a list of experiences, credibilities to her name that are quite wonderful. And something I'm very excited to ask her a little bit later in the conversation is about beings that she calls the pinks. Now, I would definitely tune in for that part. I think that's going to be incredible. But meanwhile, Angelique, welcome to Self-Love Talks.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Tara, for inviting me to share, deep, I think it's experiences that might be helpful for others. I think our stories are so important and learning from each other as well. So thank you for that.
Oh, it's a total pleasure. It's a real privilege to have you. Some people may recognize you. Those of you who watched the Day of the Divine Feminine, we had many, many thousands of people tuning into that. So thank you all for watching. And if you haven't seen it, go find it on my channel. It's extraordinary. And Angelique, I actually was actively looking for the women that I knew could bring a certain quality, a certain message. And I hunted Angelique down, found her, and she very graciously agreed to participate. And you were a wonderful guest, Angelique. And I really want to thank you again for that. It was a very special day. So thank you for
it was a beautiful day, and I cannot recommend everybody to actually watch the entire set of the 9 hours. Take your time, but the energy is really building up in it, and every moment from the prior one. So really, really take the time to do that.
Thank you. And so Angelique, tell everybody a bit about you. And actually, I want to precursor that by just saying, as I was preparing for tonight, I was making my dinner and thinking about you and thinking about what we would talk about and tuning in. I just started to feel so blissed out. I think I have the best guests on my show. And maybe not the world's most known guests. Like, I think you're one of the world's best kept secrets. I do. Like a lot of my guests, most of my guests, the world's best kept secrets. But I feel like this is our time, don't you? Isn't it time that the world knew about you and others like you?
I would tend to agree with you. There's a message that was coming a few months ago, and the message was watch for the silent ones.
Really?
Yes, watch out for the silent ones, because when they will start speaking, the impact, will be felt.
Wow.
And usually those silent ones would tend to not be that active on social platform, actually. Or they would have tried and it's not working for them. And actually it's because they're meant to be the best kept secrets. And I'm saying that not out of ego, but there's a thing about synchronistic meetings. And it's not about hunting down connections, but allowing connections to emerge when they're meant to happen. And yes, that world, the online world, has its set of rules, its set of lies and shadows. And yeah, I tried it and I didn't like it. And now I'm like allowing things to just happen.
You have a background in the corporate world, don't you?
Yeah, I have a 15 years career, even though I quite quite young probably, but yes. And I did work in very hardcore industry. And when I say hardcore, I mean defense, automotive, oil and gas, that old world. And as a female, as someone who came into those industry to bring the change. So
that wasn't easy.
It hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy because yes, my background is I've got a mechanical engineering diploma. So again, studies that are mainly done by men or guys. And but what I learned on that journey is it allowed me to have incredible experiences across the entire world because I was managing actually international teams. We were helping developing some of the industries locally in underdeveloped countries. We were looking at other aspects because in some of those countries, some children are working. And there's a thing about like saying, no children work, or saying, okay, well, there's circumstances in those countries. How can you make it safe for them? And how can you help them grow? And that's something that not a lot of people want to hear about. It's not about putting, a blindfold on your eyes. It's actually what can you do to make things change or integrate the local culture?
Absolutely. And listen to other people's needs and requirements rather than barging in there and kind of putting our own agendas in there, isn't it? Haven't we had enough of other people's agendas and we just want to, thrive the way that we want to?
Yeah. So I have had, the amazing chance in a way to lead, teams in Korea, India, Russia, South America, South Africa. So, yes, they were for the automotive industry, but the interactions were going so far beyond that. It was about recruitment. How do you place, good people at the right place where they can have influence on, agendas, development, innovation, that feels good at heart,
And of course, that's what you do for people now. So you had a massive career change, didn't you?
Yes.
You left corporate and now you're an incredible coach. I believe you train people for speaking as well. And on the other side of that, you have this whole passion and expertise around birthing.
Yes. So
how did that happen?
It's quite fascinating. So I realized that every piece in one's life actually come together. So I was good in cooperation to kick up new projects, to launch new lines and new innovation. And for example, one of the big key on success was the Dacia brand, so built in Romania and Morocco and in India and in Brazil. And so we're speaking here about energy of creation, and it doesn't, choose if it's for a project or for a baby. It is the same creative energy. And the birthing, the fertility, and the conscious pregnancy, and most importantly as well, the postpartum came really as I was leaving the corporation, and the call became so strong that I knew it was either I would decide how it would go to live, or, I would gently be kicked by the universe to get, on my track as a full-time activity. And so, yes, I do still continue to do coaching with people that have more, corporate career or making changes, but we're using, really like intuitive and energetic base to make this happen and transitions, as well as coupled with, the past 15 years of experience, because I was doing that actually inside the companies as well. managing teams, recruiting them, leadership programs inside those. But as I left, a lot of mistakes that people do is they're like, oh, I'm going to become, full-time business coach because this is what I was doing. But what they don't realize is as you go through this process, the cooperation program imprinting your energy needs to leave, and you really need to honor the break. And I did that mistake myself because I could feel in my energetic field as I was setting up, full time, the expansion and the contraction like an elastic when I was pushing things too much. So it was physically painful.
Yeah.
So I really had to make the full jump, but make the full jump with my heart, with my body, with everything. And I'm like, it went to the point that if I need to die, metaphorically, I needed to do it with gusto. And this is where I engage in the first, what I call my synchronistic or serendipity trips, because there's nothing better to find yourself than you throw yourself in an experience in a way. And going through that, then you face your fears, you face your shadow. You can't have to blame it on others.
Yeah, because it follows you around.
It follows you around. So, and it's a deep anchoring into faith and trust. And I was rebirthing myself in that process. And, it's like and it was exactly the same steps as you have when you're birthing a child, actually, even that step where, the prior months where you kind of get the glow and then you really want, like the baby to be here, and you entering that, few hours or days prior to the baby coming here. They are the same spiritual steps, exactly the same. So women will understand it more easily. Men, that would be a bit more difficult. But you really have to throw yourself inside it to really rise as the phoenix out of it. And so as I was doing that, there was that focus that started to come about real birth, real conscious birth and pregnancy. And most importantly, the fertility part. And I don't have, a midwife background. I've been interested into medicine since a very young age. I even wanted to be a doctor in the medicine. So I did quite a lot of tests in that. Finally decided to change, but the calling was always there. It was always there.
The healer inside.
Yes. And even, when we speak about energy and medicine and biology, I remember when I did my MBA in Cambridge, what I said as an intention at the time was, I want to do biology or energy. Well, I ended up doing energy in BP. That's the irony of it. And then clean energy, actually. But then the energy and the medicine started to grow aside. So both of them literally and etherically started to happen.
So it's like you're creating twins, really.
It is. And you need to smile at the irony of it all. So coming back to birthing and the energy, there was a deep thing about preparing for birth. And then this frequency kept coming. And it was really pink. It was soft. It was extremely high. It was gentle and joyful, but it was no bullshit. And I didn't know how to call them because I'm like, some of the frequency we work with don't have names. And as human, we like to have names.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I know it was something that was deep within me that I needed to let emerge. So this is how I'm like, I'm just going to call them the pinks because this is the color that I see. But it's like,
can I pause you? Because I really want to hear about it. But before you tell us about the pinks, because I'm really excited about that, I just want to come back to what you were saying earlier about the surrender process and the birthing process, because you said quite a lot there. So I just want to go back and just kind of anchor some of it in the fact that you took a giant leap. You said gusto. With gusto, you left your corporate job because something was calling you before the universe moved you in some other way. And you've thrown yourself into having these journeys and finding yourself and coming more in your power, coming more in your mastery. And yet a lot of people, I think, would love to do that right now, wouldn't they? They would love to go traveling. And you and I are both in France, and France has been in the news a lot this week, and everybody knows why.
Yeah.
And personally, I haven't seen any of it. I didn't know about what was going on in the local towns and cities. And I'm in quite a remote place, actually, considering I'm in a middle of a really touristy area in the south, but I'm actually in a remote little island. I feel like a bit like Avalon in Glastonbury. I feel like I'm on the Avalon of the south of France. I'm up on this hill, and I'm super hot, by the way, so I keep like dabbing myself. But I haven't seen any of the chaos that's going on, and all of the lockdown rules, and all of the fear mongering, and all of this crazy stuff that's limiting people's freedoms from traveling and everything else. And you know, you're actually moving around the country right now. Do you?
I'm moving with a car.
Right.
And you know, the name of the car is a duster. So I'm carrying
the duster. I love that you said that properly, because I always call it a Dacia. I didn't know that you could call it a Dacia. That makes it sound really good when you call it a Dacia.
Yeah, so that's the Dacia, but the particular brand of that vehicle is Duster. Right. So you're dusting things away.
Right. But
so
a lot of people aren't able to just do that traveling right now, but of course we can in our own countries, right?
You can in your own country. And if there's something bigger than you moving you actually will be able to move. I remember last year when one of those trips took me to Crete, I didn't had filled the papers on time. So I just filled them when I arrived at the airport. And I'm like, shit, I might just not go. And as I was entering the airport, I was just showing that I filled in the document. I was just praying. And at the beginning, they didn't want me to pass. And then they gave me a little paper when I dropped my big luggage there. And as I went up, then before boarding, I saw a space that was opened. And I'm like, I just went in. I saw people queuing, but I didn't even, like, I didn't recall that. It was more go straight and board. And then when I turned around, I saw people queuing, and actually all the people who had that little paper were put apart and they couldn't board. And I'm like, well, maybe I should just go. And it was like, no, get in the plane. Wow. And I went in the plane.
And on the other side, it was fine?
And on the other side, when I arrived in Crete, it was fine. They did a PCR test. And then I started this journey, which was, and I need to write about it, so it would be part of, the blog, because there's so many nuggets in it. Mm-hmm. But it was mind-blowing. It was heart-blowing, mind-blowing, everything blowing.
You had the calling. Essentially, you followed the calling, and that led you, guided you. There was trust there. Yes, you had to have a test, but otherwise, everything else kind of worked.
Everything else worked out.
That is really good news. I'm really glad, that you shared that story, because I know lots of people have been really worrying about the traveling. And guys, if you're, those of you that are watching, let me know if that's something that you've been wanting to do, because I know I've got a 21-year-old son who is just itching to start traveling and moving. He just wants to go. And it's so true. The amount of times I've had the most incredible adventures of my life. And actually being pregnant with my first child, this same child, was one of the most epic adventures. I went to Australia 6.5 months pregnant and had very little money and ended up nearly giving birth in a backpackers. But I had the most incredible adventure and the most incredible birthing experience ever, like blissed out of my mind. So when you feel that calling, nothing gets in the way, really.
No, but really have to hold to the trust and really connect with the heart and go.
Yeah, that is wonderful to hear. So also you were talking about surrender and saying how with the birth analogy, lots of men might not relate to that. And actually, can I just take this moment? Jamie Ike and his beautiful wife, Beth, have just had their second baby today. Congratulations, guys. Everyone sent them loads of love. Beautiful family. Little baby Maddox was born today. But I feel like everybody's going through a massive rebirth right now, aren't we? A rebirth of what it is to be a human being, what it is to live as a being on this earth right now, as a human citizen.
It is. And what has been very clear since the solstice is people think they're already making the step and say, oh, I'm going with the flow. But the level of control our mind still has is huge, really huge. And a lot of people want to do those massive quantum leap. That doesn't work all the time. That doesn't work all the time.
It's quite painful, can't it? So what would you suggest people do? Because you talked about surrender and I completely agree with you, but how do you help someone do that?
It's a thing. So two words that people will use is surrender or submit. Me, what I use is rather let emerge from within out. So it's that steps where in your silence and stillness, and you will have the itchy and the mind will want to take and say, okay, I need to do something. The way it works for me, and so for example, so I've been living in London for 8 years, and the example of this road trip, I left my flat in London. I was supposed to go to the US, to California for a road trip. There's a big thing waiting for me there. But because of COVID, I couldn't. So that's why all those things, serendipity, synchronistic trips happened the last year. In January, I was supposed to go down, join a friend in Portugal, but they blocked the border with UK. So I thought I was going to drive there. It's like a window closed. I'm going to go for the next one. This is how I am. I'm like, if I need to be somewhere, I will be somewhere. And I'm like, I'm going to stop in Brittany where my family is based, take a car and drive down. But the thing is, there were some other plans for me there. And I stayed there for 6 months. So up to the end of June, my mind was like, no way I'm going to stay with them for 6 months. Like, you will not make me do that. And that was the biggest school ever, where I learned how to be in my power, how to be in my presence with my family, with a father who's a very old military generation. So how can you embody truly that love, that water, and that fire? And the number of times I'm like, no, I'm going to take the car away and I will just drive. And the other part in me was, when your task here is finished, you will receive an invitation. So for 6 months, I decided to make peace with the land of Brittany, where I was born.
Very important that you do that, because can we really go forward unless we've made peace with our past? Seriously.
And it was peace with the land, a deeper peace with the family. I've done so much inner work with my family. 6 months. I mean,
I love that you were in your power. And how many people can say that they are really, truly in their power, present with themselves, in the presence of their family?
Yeah.
I think that's like, well done. That's an achievement.
And it is, because you see in the coaching industry, it's like, oh, if you don't match with people, just leave them. And like, the ultimate mastery is with each and single person that still triggers you, can you still be in your presence? And the ultimate test will be your family.
Exactly, where you came from, your stock.
Yes.
Did self-love play a part of that?
So it did. And in the self-love part, there would be self-love about, there was two things that happened, and I think it's important to mention, because a self-love would have been, for my own sake, I need to be out of here because it's toxic, particularly on my father's side. But what I find interesting is, as soon I'm like, okay, I will honor myself and leave, there's a shift that was happening energetically. And he was moving forward as well, again. And it did happen 2-3 times like that. And I was ready to go, like suitcase back, I'm going. And then there would be an evolution. And I'm like, I don't want to leave out of anger. However, what I want to say is sometimes it's too much and it's okay to do so. But I knew there was something deeper. So I was always like, then honoring myself in speaking my truth and hard truth. First, my father had a very hard childhood. So I'm like, I love him on a higher level. I understand his childhood wound and everything. So I should be the grown up, and, I'm the expert. I should do the work, speak him through it. And then it's like, no, I need to speak as the daughter as well. I need to speak my anger with him. I need to really speak that deep truth and fire. And, when we do this whole spiritual world, people are very cool with getting with the water element, but the fire element, and particularly the fire as more the angry one, what I call sacred anger, needs to be expressed too.
I totally agree, especially when it's on behalf of your little inner child who's been suffering quietly inside of you for all these years, and she hasn't had her say. And if that anger doesn't get expressed and heard and welcomed and loved, then all of that anger is, as we all know, or as you know as a healer, will just go right into the body, right into the physical, and manifest itself on the physical level as something very inflamed and something very painful. So it's better out. I think that's just the divine work. It's, we want to help the children on the planet, and the first child we have to help, I believe, is our own inner child.
Yes, it is. And yet there's so I did a lot of inner child before, but here it's more like I'm at that stage where it's like pure power from within, and stopping the mind from saying, oh, that's okay, that's acceptable, that's not acceptable. It's allowing the energy to come out. And I'm very conscious that when my anger comes out, it can really hurt. So there's ways as well to allow it, to be expressed, to come out, to bring the wisdom and the water after. So in the way, I allow myself to be moved by the energy, and at the same time allow myself to still be centered. So it's simple and very complex at the same time. And usually it finishes with water. Because
I love you describe the elements like that.
Yeah, with with my father were like two very, fiery, and I had to develop that defense mechanism to be able to, and that's what I suppose helped me be in that men's world the years prior.
Isn't that fascinating?
But then I found out there's a way of softness that can still do the same work. So the fire will give a bit of, the power, and then the softness will start weaving in. But there's a real presence and anchoring that happens when that happens.
It sounds to me, Angelique, and correct me if I haven't got this right, but it sounds to me when we're talking about divine masculine or divine feminine, or the masculine wounding or the feminine wounding, it sounds to me like you're embodying both. And this time with your father particularly has enabled you to really help heal that wounding in the masculine, which is, I'm guessing, why you left corporate and what you came up against there, why you went to corporate in the first place, so that you could integrate and understand and learn and master something. And then to have that time with your father, what a blessing. Because I completely agree with you. I don't believe, yes, we can have people around us that we can judge as toxic. And it's very convenient to judge somebody else as toxic and then cut the cords and push them away and whatever. But hold on a minute. This is a world of vibrational matching and like attracting like. And if we attract people into our lives like this, or we've been bred from people that are like this, then we're going to have some of that in ourselves, right? That's us too. It's like, it's a me too. It's not just a them.
No.
And it's so important just to own up to that and be humble with it and just love the whole lot, right? Just find a way of making peace with all of it.
There's so many great points that you're mentioning. The energy that I did find in my interaction with my father was exactly the same energy with corporation. A lot of people in corporation don't realize that we having that level of interaction, and what we don't, it's like very authoritarian, and particularly in France, it's very hierarchical. So kind of parents, children, and micromanaging. I think it's evolving. What I learned when I was in the English culture, where there's more soft skill apply, was a different way of leadership. But I still see the exploitation rather than inspiration.
Right.
The type of leadership as well, moving from really like top-down micromanaging or bossing around, rather than honing the own charisma and leading from inspiration and allowing people to just be in their talent at the right place in the company. So I realized that on the spot when I left the corporation, I was leaving that old masculine energy out, in a way, old way of doing. That doesn't mean I might not do other punctual project works with corporation, but it will be in a totally different energy. And I want to say that a lot of people, as they have their awakening and who had a corporate career, then want to be coaches and want to be other things. But I'm like, look at what you built before, because these are part of your puzzles. Not everybody is meant to be coaches. You can go back and influence the future Earth in what you were doing before, but because we need those people inside, but with a new energy, when you're ready to actually be in your power and the womb of creation, creativity and inspiration in those companies.
I'm so glad that you said that. That was one of the things I wanted to come back to, because you started talking about that earlier. And I just wanted to thank you for bringing your work, your integrating work into the corporate environment, because, I mean, we're all human beings. And there's a lot of people that they only know the corporate world. And yet they're also seeing the bars on the window and going, this is who I am. This is what I've developed. This is what I can do. These are my skills. Where else can I put them? And coaching would seem like the only choice, or one of the very limited choices of what to do after corporate. However, yeah, absolutely, transformation from within. And I believe that we are right on the precipice, and this time right now is so, so incredibly special, because so many people who have these very important life skills that we all need. We can't all be coaches, we can't all be healers, although lots of those are needed also. But we need people that have skills like this. I don't have corporate skills. I have no idea what a corporate life looks like. I've never lived in that world ever. So there's a whole realm of skills and knowledge, which is so incredibly valuable, and yet is an aspect that needs to come into balance, come into harmony with the divine masculine, divine feminine, healing the masculine and feminine wounding within all of us. And really part of the new earth is to bring these new structures, whether it's a beneficial corporation of some kind, but it's actually a serving others corporation that serves all of the people in the levels as well, not just serving those at the top.
No. So there's a thing about, you know, the evolution of female in the corporate industry. It's like you had the whole male patriarchal energy. You needed to have female come with that same type of energy to at least put a first face on it.
Makes sense.
The second stage now is to go in the higher octave of feminine embodiment in the corporation with the value of kindness, softness, compassion, charisma, because I think charisma is more a feminine thing.
Beauty, bringing your beauty to it as well.
The beauty to it. And then, you know, having what I call the noble masculine quality dive into. And this is where we are at. And I think this is how the new leaders will start to emerge, but it's not something that you learn. It's not something that you push. Something that you let emerge and embody from deep within.
And you midwife people with that, don't you?
It's midwifing people through this stage. And that's why I find it very funny that I do that with people for their corporate evolution or shift and change in between, because it might be they will need 1 or 2 years of corporation to come back with a different energy and a different approach. But midwifing as well, real babies.
Bambinos. Incredible job. Angelique, so tell us, because you're also incredibly, so you have all this background in engineering and everything else that you do, but also you've talked a lot about energy tonight, so you're very sensitive to energies, and you're pretty switched on, aren't you, in that kind of psychic realm? I mean, I can see your psychic energy and can see that channeling through you. So what happened with this energy called the pinks?
So I get shivers and I want to cry.
I feel you. I really do. I do feel it. Let's all breathe together and just feel what Angelique is feeling together.
So in the evolution that we're going through, I think we all know, people doing that work knows that we have a task of lightening up our body in terms of frequency. So we do all that inner work to stop patterns from our family, society, that won't be beneficial for the future. It's part of the process. You know, there's no shame about it. We don't, you know, we're signed up for that. We're here to be the transformers. And we have a difficult task because we are the in-between generations. And it's not easy every day. And it's not easy every day for me either. And some days I will have crisis of faith too, but they came very more strongly a bit more than 1 year ago as I was starting this pregnancy journey. And it's like, you are preparing couples toward us. And by that, it's these frequencies are very high. They're extremely loving, they're extremely intelligent. They will it's part of those generation that will be born knowing. And it means the parents, they will choose their parents as well. You know, it's kind of a creative process, but who would have a higher understanding of, you know, of life, of how to interact with them from a very young age, how to actually, that will be there to support them up to when they physically can be autonomous and be in that world. Actually, it's not so much about protection, you could say, but you know, as a baby child, you need to have a surrounding and a cocoon to allow those, you know, children to grow up. But it's couples who won't play on their projection of what the future here is, not their own dreams. They're here to steward, so they're here to listen. I'm not speaking about, you know, having the child as a king and then the child throw tantrums, you know. Mm-hmm. I'm really speaking about parents who will be able to like really carve you know, like the bank of the river, so that it can flows. Because I can see in the spiritual world as well, people having so much projection on what life, you know, their children should have. So there's a lot about the word, there's humble,
yeah,
humble in listening and wisdom, because the child might not go in the direction actually the parents think. So it will require quite a lot of openness, open-mindedness about that. Because and you can say that about a lot of different frequencies, they are contributors to you know, the technology that will come. But this one is extremely particularly heart-based. This frequency is very strongly heart-based.
When you see the color pink, what energies does it associate? Because for me, because I see people's energy, and I'm a soul reader, right? So I see people's energy. And the pink that you're talking about, I believe, is this kind of rose quartzy pink.
It is. It's light. It's very light pink, and it's diamondish. You know, there's the diamonds. It's like pearlescent pink. It's very fine. It's extremely fine and precious.
And I feel that when I see people's energy, where it's clear, anyway, when it's working really beautifully, the higher heart is that color, but also so is the sacral chakra.
Yeah.
And by sacral, because I see chakras a little bit different to how they're all put on the pictures with the nice orange and yellow and red. I don't see it that way. So the orangey is more with the navel area. And there's a pink in just above the pubic bone, and that's what I call the sacral.
Yeah.
Not the navel, the sacral, it's underneath. And it's not the base center, which can be dark red when it's connected. It's the in-between place. And that's the divine feminine.
Yeah. Yes.
That's what I associate. What does it mean for you?
For me, it really, it's that frequency that comes and is linked to the frequency of miracles. And yes, there's purity in it, but I don't want that word to be loaded with I need to be super pure.
I understand.
Because then people are, going on the extremes. And we know, for example, in religion, what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Here, it's a purity of heart, but that purity of heart really happens when you're stripped bare naked from inside. And it works with deep truth, and deep truth about everything that is human, even things we think is ugly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about being the best human on earth. It is not about that. Or having, like clearing to have the highest frequency. It's not about that.
That doesn't work, does it?
It doesn't. And I agree with you that that frequency goes as well in the womb, because then a lot of my work started to happen there with the womb. And it's like,
so that channel was open.
Channels open, and this is where purity codes comes in.
Mm-hmm.
But purity as in allowing the matrix of the womb to soften and open. And this is why actually some of those things might come through the initiation of infertility.
Explain that a little bit more.
Because that would be the ultimate thing that the couple will have to give up. When all of us will have different challenges, and at one point you think you can't have this child, which means you really have to go so deep.
So letting go of the attachment of what having the child means to you in your life and everything that it's going to give you.
Yes.
And you're not having, I actually know a little bit about this. I have 2 kids, but I always felt that I would have a daughter, and I've had this relationship with this little girl in spirit for a really long time. And my partner, my beloved that I'm with, he was sterilized, snipped and cut and tied 20 odd years ago. And we would love to have a child. And, it's his birthday tomorrow. He's going to be 57. I'm coming up to my 50s. It's that time of life. And it was a long process, a lot of healing and letting go of the attachment that I had to having. And I'm blessed already. And I know I'm so blessed and grateful for my children I already have. But I had this attachment. So I can completely relate to that feeling, even though I haven't had the same struggle with fertility. I can totally relate.
And the other thing that come through is those children might be born of older couples, because they would have lived, they would have learned, they would have.
I agree. Do you feel, can I ask you a question? Do you feel, because some of the other ladies, and I'm yet to do other single interviews with each of them, but there were other women on the day of the Divine Feminine who were talking about miraculous conception. So you're talking about frequency of miracles. You're talking about these, and I really understand what you're talking about. I had a connection from the back of my womb place going up into this channel that was open for about 2 years. And they were telling me it was like connected to the realm of heaven where all the unborn children are. And for me, it was incredibly golden, but not gold like the metal, but gold like sunrise or sunset.
Yes.
And it's that goldeny, orangey, slightly pinky. It doesn't have one stable color. It's that golden light of, everyone knows, the most incredible sunset that just fills your heart. The color blows you away. The energy blows you away. And it was this golden place. And the children there, the unborn souls, were saying to me very, very clearly, help clean the pipes so that we can come down and not get dirty, so that we come out the bottom, and we're the pipes, by the way, we are the channels, and so that they can come through us, because we forget in giving birth to a child, we're giving birth to their entire soul, not just their little tiny body, but their whole being. All of their multidimensional self needs to birth as well. And so they were like, we need clear channels so that we don't come through at the other end covered in muck and not recognizing ourselves, lost and confused. and
Yes.
covering your stuff because you haven't cleaned. Go clean up. And they were telling me, help clean the channels so that we can come through.
It is exactly that. It is exactly that. I had the same message. And at the same time, the way we put that message is important, because then when people do that, they go in their shadow work and they're being ashamed and they're like, I haven't done enough.
I hear you.
Of that. So what I want to say to everybody is, yes, it is about being the purest possible to welcome those kids, you know, to allow them to birth through us. But at the same time, don't blame yourself, or don't, because it's so easy to do it, to go, you know, like pass a bit further. And this is where compassion and self-love become extremely, extremely important in the journey.
It's the holy grail in that journey, isn't it?
It is. And then you're like, because it's simple and complicated. It's, you know, you have to let go, and then, you know, you have to clean, and you have to release, all of that at the same time. And sometimes it's more like that thing that will allow you to do that is follow your heart every day. Mm-hmm. The clearing will happen. The clearing will happen.
And also a midwife like yourself that can support that journey when you don't know the way.
Yes.
And there is fear of rebirthing and letting go, and a lot of pain. Let's face it, it's not an easy job, and every single one of us needs help. This is not a lone wolf thing. We're all here to help each other, and having a midwife like yourself is priceless in a journey like that.
And there's another thing that is important, is a lot of women might go through that stage, but what I've observing for the moment is their men are not yet there, but energetically you need the two. Mm-hmm. And the men start to awake. And when I'm speaking here, I'm speaking probably more to the people that I know, who some of the women fear owning their spirituality, but they're still very much into it. And their companion kind of undermine that. Because some of those babies will come through those people. And it's like bringing the man in that work as well, as a couple, to weave it together. And I know some of the men don't want to go in the whole super spiritual stuff, and that's okay. There are people, for example, like me, who can, you know, like manage to weave with their life and to make it more practical, you know, in a way, because we have range of people.
We need the polarity as well. I have a real polarity with my partner, and his spirituality, the way that he connects, is very different to mine. And exactly what you've been saying, the more that I've used self-love and loved myself and integrated myself without that judgment and cleaned within, it's like it's had an effect on him, and he's transformed and changed as well. And I still need him to be the warrior guy. I mean, if it came to it, he would defend my life with guns and everything else he would have to do. And he would, you know, kill animals to feed me, even though I'm a lifelong vegetarian. He would do the manly thing. And his spirituality is different to mine. And I think it's really important to let everybody have their own version, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Not somebody else's business. It's very personal. It's very private.
Yeah. So it's how do you like bring that? And that's why sometimes it's a bit easier to do 1-1, because the referential would be slightly different. And yes, and bringing on the subject of we're birthing the baby and all its multidimensionality. And this is where, you know, the journey of birth include the postpartum, because a lot of the postpartum thing are actually the mother, and partly if they work with that frequency of the pinks, but all babies will hold that energy in her belly for 9 months, and then it's out of her. So the postpartum comes from the fact that you don't feel any more that extra vibrant energy from within your belly. And this is where the postpartum care becomes very important to, weave down, to close, to help women who don't know what to do during those times energetically, to, it's not reset, but come back to their own heart, actually.
Yeah. Sounds a lot like what you said when someone leaves corporate, they have to, the corporate's been part of them. It sounds a lot like the same thing.
It is the same thing. Yeah.
I hadn't thought of it in terms of that, though, about how it is for a mother, even though I am a mother, when you have the child and they're out. But I do recognize when I birthed my first Burke, and then it was like I had the like postnatal depression about because I was like, oh, now what? Something I birthed it out, and there was an emptiness for quite a while, and I wasn't prepared for that. So I think it's really special that you've shared that, because in all of this letting go, we do leave a space, and what happens to that space and how we nurture that space. Because if we're not careful, we can fill that empty gap with any old crap that comes rolling along, or somebody else's stuff, or somebody else's ideas, or somebody else's agenda for us. And it really is important to nurture and protect that kind of that new empty space, isn't it? And prepare it for something, to create something new, whatever that is.
Yes, exactly.
And I want to ask you again. Oh, sorry.
No. I'm like,
because I asked you the question about miracle birth, and then I rushed on and started talking about something else. So just coming back to that, what do you feel about that potential? What do you feel about that?
This concept, or this feeling, this intuition has been coming a long time to me. And, the first was because I actually did work with Marguerite Rigodioso. I did. So I did her Dove Priestess training. But what led me there was something specific about the 7 Pleiades, and it was the miraculous birth. But that was 2 times ago. It's like there was a deeper knowing in me, that I'm like, there's something around miraculous birth. And then the word miracle still continue to come every time the pink frequency comes. So there's definitely something, a fear in me or a shadow in me. Don't want to project too much on that or give hopes, on that, because I know as well how much, co-creation work. But what I want to say is that there's definitely something there. And that then is about individual stories of the mother and the couple, and, what they go through and what they felt in their body and in their heart about it.
And do you think that perhaps there's a shift in awareness, or even a shift in our physiology around fertility, our wombs, our cycles, and the ability to conceive?
They are shifts. We started to speak a bit about that, in the Divine Feminine Day. And I have that knowing that we didn't have, or we shouldn't be monthly, that we could be pregnant, fertile, when the moment, is right. And yet for me, it's like having the knowing and being now here, when in time, maybe that already happened with some of the women, that they managed to go and make the steps towards that. It does require quite a huge connection with your body and communication, with, it's not only the womb, but each cell, the entire diva of the body, the organism of the body. It does require a strong intimacy on all levels with that. And that's why what we call sacred sexuality or sacred body work is extremely important, because you won't come there. There would be things that really need to be reclaimed in our connection to our bodies.
And divinity being one of those.
Divinity being one of them. Yes. And that's why we say it, allowing it to emerge from within. You know, when they say listen, and it's like, can I be in this space and allow things to emerge?
Because that's the matter, isn't it? It's being a vessel.
The vessel.
The Holy Grail. It's totally pure without being ostentatious or overt in any way. It's just humble, simple. And you're in the Cathar region right now, which is so beautiful that we're talking about this, and the chalice and the whole thing is just really exquisite, actually. But that's what it is to be the feminine, isn't it? Is to be open without the expectation, without the attachment, and yet completely present and co-creational with the consciousness, with.
Yes. And for me, there's a thing about the co-creation, and particularly last year, I've seen it happen. The things that I wanted didn't happen. The thing that I dreamed or wished happened. And even it's like on sometimes even mundane level. One morning, I'm like, oh gosh, I wish I could find a way to wash my clothes today. In the afternoon, one of the girls I was staying in was like, I'm going to ask if we can, like use the washing machine. And, I mean, try it every day on super mundane stuff. The day after, I was like, I haven't heard the news for a long time. I will just know if something needs to come to my hair, it will. Later on in the day, this is when I learned that, unfortunately, a lot of European countries have been following French example about, the pass. So every day it's been like that, but I'm not, there's a lightness in it. Like if it doesn't happen, not an issue. If it does happen, that makes it a bit fun, right? Versus like really wanting and needing something to happen.
So if we're aligned with our wishes and aligned with our hearts and open to receive, then when the universe calls or the universe opens a doorway so that you can get on the airplane, or the universe, whatever, opens a doorway for something else to come through and be given to you, it's like, be ready for that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's a massive, that is a quantum shift in terms of a daily reality for you now, and for other people like us right now. It's exactly how I ended up here. I wished it. I exactly how I look over my balcony and look over my view there. I dreamed it, and I'm here.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to do anything. The universe just opened it. I didn't have to save up and work hard and bargain and haggle. It just arrived and was given to me because I was ready to receive. And I feel like everything that you've said tonight, Angelique, everything that you've shared in your story, all weaves together as this: be with yourself, clean yourself, come into your heart, make your wishes, open up, surrender, like you were saying, or let emerge from within, let the guidance emerge from within, and things will happen.
They will happen, but in the meantime, is live your life, have fun, live the life. It's like, because people will stay 1 hour and start to meditate. I don't do that. I don't do that. And it's sometimes, we're like, oh, I wish that it didn't happen. No big deal. I just go by my day, It's
it's a daily practice. It's just being, isn't it? It's not even a practice. It's just being, just undoing everything that stopped you just being you in the first place, and come back to the
object. Yeah, and sometimes the day is just go and do grocery and listen to music, and the range of music is very wide. Doesn't have to be only spiritual music. So it's really allowing Thanks to be. And you know, one of the most beautiful things that happened in my trip, in my Tour de France, which funny enough started with an invitation from a friend who lives in Tours, France.
So
the city of Tours.
You literally
yes.
Tour de France.
But I didn't know it was going to be a Tour de France. It just happened to start in Tours and then Paris. And then I went Strasbourg and I'm like, this is funny. It's really starting to look.
You can have part of your tour to my house if you want.
And I ended up seeing friends and receiving invitation from friends to stay in their home I hadn't seen for 15 years.
Nice.
15 years. And the exchange that happened, because it's like, I still recognize you. We've changed so much. And at a certain level, we haven't. And the sharing of the stories that happen, you know, it's kind of like a pilgrimage thing, but it was really funny how lined up everything was, and everything would happen just the day before or sometimes within the same day. So this is when I said trust needs to come ahead. I couldn't have planned that before.
I think this message is really powerful, because for all of the stress there is about traveling, and what if, I mean, everyone's allowed to travel to their own country. You're allowed to go home to wherever you're a national of, and there's nothing that can stop you from doing that, as long as you can get the travel, obviously, and get a plane or whatever's needed. But there's always a way, isn't there? Like you're saying, if there's a calling and there's a way, it will open. But also we can travel where we are.
It is. And most of the time is, sometimes you will be very surprised by what you discover around the place where you are. And that happened to me. I live in my parents live in a very small village in Brittany named Plouan. And it's like, we're speaking 2 roads, right? And I'm like, there's nothing in that area. So I went, you know, Brocéliande Forest. And so I navigated all around, trying by my, you know, guidance and feeling energies and setting up a tour for people who want to do that with me. And then one day we took a road that we never took with my parents. And here I see alignments of stones, and not only one, but 5. And I'm like, what? Wait, where? And 2 linear, you know, that 2 linears, 5 alignments.
Wow.
On the other side of the town that my grandparents have been living in for 30 years.
Wow.
None of them said any of that to me, even though they knew what I was into. And when I arrive on site, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is part of a line that go from Carnac in the south of Brittany to Mont Saint-Michel.
Wow.
And the city is actually quite big, but nobody speak about it. And it was just on the other side of the town.
Wow. So at the right time, you're divinely guided and you were there.
And so that's why I say to people, even if you feel trapped where you are, just start exploring around, open yourself, connect to the land, allowing it to show you where to go.
I love that. And it may be that people have to revisit their ancestry. It may be that people have to revisit family that they closed doors to or tried to break ties with. And that actually the going forward can't happen until the ties have been healed and bonds mended and peace made. And I actually highly value that. I think it's absolutely imperative that we do that. It's super important.
I thought I had made peace with them years ago. There was a bit more.
There's always a bit more, isn't there?
Yeah.
Always another layer. Angelique, you're an absolute delight. You really are. I love that you're called Angelique, because you are very Angelique, very angelic. I literally could ask you so much more. I think we'll have to have you another time, and definitely on the next Divine Feminine event that I do, I'm going to invite you again, and we can go deeper and more deeper into this birthing stuff. But we've been on here for over an hour now, and I just want to, well, first of all, I want to say I've got several friends in the area where you are, and Anaya Sophia being one of them.
Yeah, I saw her last week.
Oh, did you? Ah!
Yeah.
She was meant to be on my show a couple of weeks ago, but she didn't have internet up there in the mountains. But we'll get her again, don't worry. And also, I just want you to share your contact details with people. How can people find you? And actually, I will put them in the link below as well.
So I've got 2 websites.
In one, your website is brilliant, by the way.
Thank you. So there's the one that is more mentoring and coaching, and I think midwifery of individuals is angeliquepeigne.com. So it's my first name, family name.com. The one that is more specific for the real birthing and birthingangels.com. And actually, the name was as well channels. And I'm like, okay, that's the name of it. So angeliquepeigne.com, birthingangels with an S.com. And I'm on Facebook too. I don't post many things on it at all. I had a few there. So it's Angelique Peigne, and family name is Peigne. So yes, there's many ways to find. And if for the people who are interested in the corporate side, I'm on LinkedIn, so you can see all about that there.
Fantastic. I'm not a LinkedIn person, but absolutely, I hear a lot of good things happen there.
Yeah, that depends on backgrounds of people, and
there's only so many social media channels I can handle.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm about 2. I manage 2.
I can't even manage my social media, so it's more drop me an email. The email is Angel Peigne, so ANGELPEIGNE @gmail.com.
We'll put that in the bottom.
Yes, it's on the websites.
Yeah, we'll put that in. We'll put that below in the bottom. Angelique, do you have any final words that you want to share at this point in time? I know there's many more things you could talk about, but at this point in time, what do you want to leave people with today?
The word that comes is inclusion. Inclusion, because a lot of where we're going, we're judging. So people who do the V thing, people who don't do the V thing, none of that matter, actually. It's how can we bring people together?
Yeah, amen.
And there's ways for the body to integrate it if needs be, because we know there's some circumstances for people that are difficult. So, it's not so black and white, actually.
No, it's not.
It's not.
And it's better not to do something in fear, or to not do something in fear, than to just do whatever feels most right in the moment, right? To do what's most loving in any moment.
It's exactly that. That is the key.
It is. It's got nothing to do with this up here.
No, with the heart. So yes, my big work is inclusion and acceptation of everyone's decision on what's going on.
Thank you so much. That's absolutely beautiful. You sublime woman. Thank you so much for your time this evening. I know it was a bit of a rush for you. You had a lot going on, you're traveling, and but it's been a real pleasure to spend some time with you. And thank you so much for everything that you've shared. And thank you for all of you who have been watching as well. I'm sorry, I'm terrible at this. I get so engrossed in listening and connecting with my guests. I forget to see if you've got any questions, but no one's put any questions. We just have lots of hearts, which is really, really lovely. So please, as always, share the video, send us your comments, what's happening with you regarding traveling, and also how did it feel when you tuned in and felt the pinks, and what do you think about miraculous birth? And I read all the comments, Angelique, and I'm sure you'll dip in and visit and read some comments. So thanks everybody.
Just one last thing is, I know for the Divine Feminine, I was offering a free webinar on the pinks, and actually I haven't done it yet. Okay. So if people still want to go on your webpage where there is the link, it's still, it's still open, and they will receive the email when I will do it.
That's fantastic news. And I always have the link for the Divine Feminine, Day of the Divine Feminine underneath as well. So, and people can still register, even though we did it already. There's a gift package, and Angelique has one gift there, but there's another 30 women with gifts that you get when you register.
Exactly.
I'd like to be on that webinar. Can I sign up?
Because I will go more into channeling, actually. So the soul frequency that you started to feel, you know, is going to come a bit more stronger.
I think if anybody else wants to be on that, just contact Angelique as well. It sounds absolutely wonderful. Thank you again, Angelique. Thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you.
And I'll see you very
soon. Bye.
I'll see you very soon. Bye.